Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root, where we dive deep into understanding and addressing root causes of chronic health issues so you can help and find healing inside and out, now and forever. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root. I am Megan Abbott, owner and founder of the holistic health practice Trifecta Collective. And today with me again is our admin, my right-hand woman, Andi, who I'm so excited to have on once again. Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to dive into part 3 and the final piece today of functional lab testing and using AI, specifically ChatGPT, to really look at this and understand. And today we're going over my all-time favorite test when it comes to functional labs. You know, I love blood work probably the most, but this is number one, my favorite functional lab test because it gives us so much information, and that is the organic acids test, specifically from Mosaic Diagnostics. So if you haven't listened to our other 2 episodes, this can be a little bit of a better watch than just a listen. So you can always feel free to go to our YouTube and you can watch it there. We'll also have documents, corresponding documents on the show notes here. So you can take a look at that and follow along as we talk through this. So once again, organic acids test. Already put this into ChatGPT and we're going to take a look at this. And I'm going to go section by section and largely rip ChatGPT a new one when it comes to the organic acids test, because in my opinion, this is the worst and does an awful job. And I've ran multiple of these through here. And there was one, I'll get to this, I just want to show this real quick, but one where it completely read a glutathione level totally wrong, like literally the complete opposite, and then recommended glutathione in the supplement recommendations. And this person came to me and was like, I already got the glutathione. And I go, you absolutely do not need glutathione. You are over converting it, overproducing it, and you should not take it. It's very contraindicated at this point in time where you do not need glutathione. So excited to be able to share this and talk through this and show you how ChatGPT does the worst job of all of the tests that we've gone over. It does the worst job of this one in particular. So let's go section by section here. So the first is the yeast and fungal section. So it considers number 7. I'm also not going to pronounce all of these because some of them are wildly challenging to pronounce, and I'm sure it would be hilarious to watch me fumble through these, and unfortunately I'm not going to do that with you today. So if we look at number 7, yeah, I would consider this slightly elevated, and ChatGPT considers this quite high. Now, one of the things we need to understand about number 7, arabinose, this one I can't actually pronounce, is that this is the most abundant form of yeast in our body. It is never going to show up, quote unquote, normal levels. It's always going to be slightly elevated. And in my opinion, in this case, with this particular test, this is very slightly elevated. It is not crazy. I've seen, it's listed at 20 here. I mean, I've seen like in the 70s to 90s for this, which, yeah, that I would consider quite high. This is not crazy. Yeah, maybe slightly elevated, but definitely not super high. And then it lists 3 other ones here as elevated. So once again, I'm not going to pronounce all of these. A lot of these are challenging to pronounce. And I would agree that these are elevated, and I also feel like it misses a couple. So in my opinion, on this first section, number 3 is trending a bit high. Number 5 is trending a bit high, which is on ChatGPT's list. Number 6 is trending high, which is on ChatGPT's list. Number 8 is trending high, which is on ChatGPT's list. And number 9 is trending very high. And I am wildly surprised that it did not pick up on this one. For me, this is one of the most dangerous markers. There's 2 markers that I always look at very, very closely. Number 9 and quinolinic acid being the other one here. And this is a very dangerous marker. This is an indication of a fungal toxin, which is almost always related to mold. And when this is trending high, this is one of the very first and strong indications that there is mold present in the body. Now, ChatGPT agrees that there is indications of significant candida and yeast overgrowth. Yes, I would agree. And in my opinion, for this first section, I can just tell by looking at this first section, this person has mold and they've got mold colonized within the gut that is also feeding yeast and fungal overgrowth issues. And if I didn't even look at the rest of this testing, we would absolutely start by looking at the mold piece versus anything else. So that is number one. And I don't think ChatGPT knows how to look for mold when it comes to the organic acid test, as do most practitioners in the holistic health functional medicine space. They do not know how to read this test to look for mold. And this is really why you need a mold literate practitioner to look at something, a test like this, and we need a better understanding so that we can look at mold and address all of the things related to mold, and we're not just symptom managing you. Now, it just completely skips over this next section of bacterial markers. And number 10 is quite high in my opinion, so is number 11. Number 12 could be a little bit lower, and I'd say number 13 looks fine. This would also indicate this person not only has yeast and fungal issues, they also have SIBO. And this is where we really look at, and ChatGPT thought all of these markers were totally fine, which I 100% disagree with. So if we keep going down here into the next section, so if we compare this here, so, oh, sorry, real quick before, number 14 is also trending high. This is an indication of beneficial bacteria. Now, this is trending high, which is not necessarily a bad thing. This person just got off of doing a round of yeast and fungal work, which obviously did not work because they have significant mold issues going on in their body. But they recently were on a probiotic, which is feeding and fueling the good stuff and also the not great stuff. And so we want to look at all of that. Okay, so, and they also put that marker, number 14, in the next section. They also marked it as low, which it is significantly high. This, the standard deviation graph, that it is quite high. So not totally in line with any of that. It marks, so looking at this next section here, so it marks number 17 as trending high. It also is looking at number 18 as trending high, which I would disagree with. And that's all. And looking at, for me, when I look at this section, these are other types of bacteria. This bacterial marker section, the first section, really looks at SIBO type of bacteria. And then this section really looks at other types of bacteria, C. diff being probably the most common one and the thing that people are most familiar with. Looking at this, 15, 16, 17, just a little bit high. It's not crazy. Maybe we've got some mild other bacterial issues. It is not crazy, though. I've seen some wild numbers in here. And I would not consider this significant overgrowth, maybe some mild overgrowth at best. The yeast and fungal stuff, the mold stuff, and the SIBO stuff are much higher in my eyes than anything else. So then we go down to the next section here, looking at oxalate metabolites. So it only marks number 21 as contributed as high. Now, I also disagree with the interpretation of this one. So number 21 is it traps heavy metals. So when we look at this and it's elevated, oftentimes we have also a heavy metal toxin overload issue going on, which we need to look at that too. We need to look at overall toxin overload issues. And we also need to understand, once again, there's absolutely mold present in this person. Mold takes priority, and then we need to look at heavy metals after that because the mold is absolutely first priority here. I would also argue that number 20 is trending a little bit high. It also does not say anything about the next section. I would also say 22 is trending a little bit high. These are further confirmation that there is some mold, some toxin overload issues going on here that need to be addressed. So once again, I just looking at a lot of different things here. There's a lot of markers that I feel like ChatGPT is missing that can be a little bit dangerous when we're looking at the bigger picture here. So next up, we're looking at mitochondrial function. So Once again, it breaks these down into a little bit of a weird section. So when we look at these mitochondrial markers, for me, number 24 is high, which also ChatGPT agrees. The other ones I would consider to be okay. And when we look at this section, 24 through 29, we're really looking at mitochondrial health overall. And does our body need some additional support when it comes to mitochondrial health? Now, just comparing this, because I've read so many of these tests, I've also done so many trainings around this particular test. I was actually pleasantly surprised to see how good this section was. Not bad at all. I'll also say, it marked this number 24, which I would consider high, as low, and it loops these in with some of the lower categories, which when we look at this section, low actually isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's really when these things are all consistently high that we have some pretty significant mitochondrial mitochondrial dysfunction type issues. And then it doesn't look at the next section here. These mitochondrial markers, the amino acid metabolites, this is a really important section too, that once again, I'm surprised that it missed this. And if we look at 30, 31, these are both trending a little bit high for me, which is an indication of gut inflammation, which once again, not terribly important that we understand. And of course, we're going to have gut inflammation. If you've got yeast, fungal, and bacterial overgrowth issues, yeah, of course, you're going to have gut inflammation going on here. So once again, it's just missing some different things here. It does mention toxicity, which I do appreciate. Once again, bigger picture, like what are all the things that impact our energy, our cellular energy? A B vitamin or magnesium deficiency, probably not playing the biggest role here. And we're going to get more information on those things later on here. The toxicity piece is a really big one. And I am glad that it mentions it, but it seems very casual, in my opinion, in how it's presented, as toxicity is not the blaringly obvious kind of issue going on, especially with mold and mold toxicity. So looking at neurotransmitters and neurotransmitter pathways, so it marks, let's see, it also goes out of order in these, which I think is odd. So it talks about number 38 first, which I would consider a little low, but not crazy. This is actually a pretty decent serotonin level in my eyes, especially considering the mold issues. And then if we look at dopamine, the HVA, once again, this is actually good. I'm pleasantly surprised to see how good this particular marker is. Looking at the VMA, it says it's normal. I would consider this low, and then which causes the ratio to be really out of balance here. And then if we look at this other dopamine marker, number 36, like this looks good to me. So maybe just a little bit of issues with epinephrine, norepinephrine, a little bit of issues with serotonin, but in my eyes, I was once again pleasantly surprised to see how decent this section was, considering, once again, I'm going back to the mold and mold issues, because mold has such a significant impact on our mitochondrial health, on our neurotransmitter health, on our gut health, on so many things. And it just is completely missing the boat here. I'm also going to just make a quick note about the quinolinic acid. Once again, number 9 and number 39 are two big ones that I always look at, because these can be some of the most dangerous and impactful markers on our body. Quinolinic acid is a neurotoxin, and usually what this will indicate is we've got some neural inflammation. Often when we see toxin overload issues, specifically mold and heavy metals, both of those can enter into our brain and wreak a lot of havoc on our mental and emotional health, on our cognitive health, and cause a lot of issues here. So once again, this is something that I really look at. I was pleasantly surprised to see this on the lower side, which is great. I really, really like to see it. Now, looking at nutrient deficiencies, and once again, it kind of goes out of order, in my opinion, with this. So if I'm going in order, we want to look at 41, 42 first. And we look at folate metabolism, which it doesn't say anything in regards to nutrient deficiencies. Maybe it says it a little bit later on. We will see as we continue to go. And it's not saying anything. Number 41 is trending quite high, which would indicate a B9 deficiency. very common to have B vitamin deficiencies here, and this is a really big one. And so we put this person on a prenatal multivitamin specifically for B vitamin support when it came to this, and just I'm not totally sure why it's even missing this one marker because it's a pretty important marker. 42 looks fine in my opinion. And then it misses this whole ketone and fatty acid oxidation section, which is once again a very important one. And oftentimes when we do see mold and mold colonization within the gut, we will see a lot of issues in this section. And really what we're looking at is the body's ability to break down fat and then use it for fuel. If it's really struggling with that, the body's going to turn to sugars for fuel and use those, which we'll usually see a lot of blood sugar dysregulation patterns come up in blood work when this happens. For this person specifically, once again, I was pretty pleasantly surprised to see like this section look pretty darn good. 45, maybe a tiny bit high, 46, a little bit high, not crazy. This is a section we really look at all together, and this is really not crazy, not terrible. And I would consider this very mild, very, very mild issues with breaking down fats and then being able to use those for fuel. So I would really support blood sugar regulation through nutrition in this case. I would never consider a supplement for this kind of person. And really also looking bigger picture, mold causes a lot of blood sugar regulation issues, causes a lot of issue with our bioproduction, the quality of our bile, and this plays a really big role in breaking down fats and then being able to use those fats for fuel. So yeah, it's just like missing the boat totally and completely when it comes to this section. Looking at the nutritional markers, so does where it does pick up here. So B12, I would consider this high. This is in this section, this gets a little funky, and this shows up a little funky on here where there are asterisk sections here. And when we look at the asterisks, high means low, low means high. This is one of those, B12 is one of the ones where high means low and low means high. So we have a lot of B12 going on, and there's some B12 imbalances, in my opinion, just looking at B9 and B12 so far with the deficiency of B9, and we're overdoing it on B12. So I want to see, is she taking a B12 supplement? What is going on here when it comes to this? It is listed under ChatGPT as normal when it comes to B12. B6, I would consider a mild, very mild deficiency. Once again, a lot of times we will see this at literally zero when it comes to people who have a lot of mold issues going on, mold illness, mold toxicity issues, mold colonization in the gut, all that kind of stuff. So pleasantly surprised to see this not as terrible. And ChatGPT marked it as slightly elevated, which I would consider it the complete opposite. I would consider it a mild deficiency or slightly deficient in this. Looking at B5, I would consider this pretty good, and it's not mentioned in ChatGPT, which is fine. B2 is considered high in this case. And once again, this is one of those markers where high means low, low means high. And so because this is high, this is an indication of a deficiency. So it does get this right, saying we do have a possible need for this, which is great. I would, the B6 possible need, yes, and the B2 a definite need. And this is once again, I'm not going to micromanage when it comes to symptoms and nutrient deficiencies because I want to look at the bigger picture, and we've got some deficiencies going on here. And so if we look at, let's see, NAC is the last one that it covers, but I want to cover CoQ10, which I would consider just a little bit high, which is okay. And I would also consider biotin a little bit high. These are both ones that high means low, low means high. Both of these, and biotin is definitely a little bit more of a culprit here where it's a little bit on the lower side, meaning that we are getting quite a bit. So I would just look at supplements. What is this person taking? Do we have an issue here? Looking at NAC. So NAC is a really interesting one when we look at the organic acid test. We can never look at NAC by itself. We need to compare NAC to glutathione levels because what should happen in our bodies, NAC should be converted to glutathione, and then glutathione is what our body's actually using. So yes, I would agree, low normal. And once again, we can't look at this by itself because if our body's doing a good job at converting this, and our glutathione levels are really where they should be, then there's no need to support. Now, if we are seeing a glutathione deficiency, then yeah, we may want to look at NAC levels and or actual glutathione levels, and bigger picture, what is impacting both of these. Because if we just supplement with NAC levels and we're not converting to glutathione, then you just have a massive influx of NAC, and that potentially you could feel that and not feel very good from it. If we supplement with glutathione, you could also feel quite bad. And a lot of people, especially at the beginning, are not ready for glutathione. It can get really sick off of glutathione. So low normal, yes, and we got to look at actual glutathione levels here. So when we look at glutathione levels, kind of down here in this next section of indicators of detoxification, it's a little bit high, just a tiny bit. And this is one where high means low, low means high. And so because NAC is not 0, it is a little bit low. We are doing a decent job at converting it, and our body could be doing a better job at converting it. So no, we don't need more NAC. However, it does appear that there is a little bit of a conversion issue going on. The question is, once again, why? What is the bigger picture issue going on? Mold and heavy metals are the glaringly obvious ones for me when it comes to this. So the next one that it mentions here is number 59, and it mentions this as elevated. I would actually consider this fine in my eyes. I would consider this quite normal. This can indicate a methylation issue and or high level of toxic exposure. A lot of times with the it's more methylation than anything else. And we need to look at, okay, do we have a lot of B vitamin deficiencies? Are we really having a hard time methylating those B vitamins? Are we taking methylated B vitamins? Where are we landing with this? I know a lot of people with the MTHFR gene mutations this marker will come up as high, and it's not massively going to change in what we do. And be sure to check out our mold, mast cell, and histamines masterclass, where I dig into that just a little bit more here. We'll put the link below. So next it goes over number 60, which is excess ammonia, and it considers this borderline high. I would consider this fine. Nothing crazy in my opinion. Like, this is a pretty good level, especially given the bacterial markers that we saw. Usually the ammonia is coming from bacteria and or parasites. It can also be, a liver dysfunction issue. Her liver numbers were pretty fine when we looked at blood work, and once again, pleasantly surprised to see where this marker was, given the gut overgrowth issues, which is where this next one comes into play, which ChatGPT and I both agree that this is elevated, and it may indicate oxidative stress, impaired detox. Yeah, I would consider impaired detox pathways and what is going on in the body. And the gut overgrowth issues play a really big role in this. Also, if someone's taking a lot of aspirin and or intaking a lot of aspartame, this can drive that marker up as well. So I almost always ask, hey, are you taking aspirin on a regular basis? Are you eating or drinking anything that has aspartame in it? Because that can drive that up. In this case, once again, I'm not surprised given the gut overgrowth issues with where this person is landing. So kind of moving on here. So it does go over next a fatty acid and ketone metabolite, which is really interesting. One, it shows up as everything is normal. No major issues here, which once again, I disagreed. Also not totally sure why it waited until the end to go over this. And it also includes a couple glutathione and oxidative stress markers, which it already went over here as well. So, and then it doesn't touch on the last piece here. So if we look at this last piece, this last section, the amino acid metabolites, number 62 to 75, these should all be low. And I'd say by and large, this all looks totally fine. Maybe 70, 73, 75, just maybe a touch higher than we'd like. This can indicate some specific nutrient deficiencies. This can also further indicate some issues with breaking down fats and being able to use those for fuel. If someone's intaking a lot of GABA, that can drive number 75 up quite a bit. And or if someone's on some different types of medications, that can drive number 75 up. So not uncommon to see that. But I'd say by and large, this looks okay. So I think it's fine that ChatGPT largely disregarded this section. And then mineral metabolism, number 76 here, phosphoric acid. This looks okay, maybe just a tiny bit low. I would look at three markers on blood work. When it came to this, I would look at magnesium, I would look at calcium, and vitamin D. Those are the three markers that will largely impact this particular marker when it comes to this. And then the very last thing it looks at, number 77, creatinine levels, just looks at the urine concentration to make sure it's good enough when it comes to the urine being concentrated enough to be able to read this test. So overall themes, yeah, I agree, and I think it misses quite a bit when it comes to this. It talks about fungal, candida overgrowth, bacterial imbalance, high oxalate, subclinical mitochondrial dysfunction, low serotonin, B vitamin, cofactor needs, glutathione, and methylation pathway stress. I would argue there's a lot more going on here when it comes to this particular test. So if we look at, please provide a supplement recommendations. Let me change this. Please provide supplement recommendations for this test. So if we look at kind of how this breaks down, and once again, if you've listened to our other two episodes, this is probably not going to be wildly surprising to you. So it breaks down sections, and it goes over yeast and fungal overgrowth specific support. Not a fan. The Saccharomyces boulardii, yes, we will use this in some protocols, usually more secondary protocols when it comes to mold and or yeast and fungal overgrowth issues after we've already done some killing work. I don't always love it right off the bat, especially when we've got some other overgrowth issues going on. Some of this other stuff, like it might help a little bit, and just not a fan. You should also absolutely not start with any sort of killing or gut management support work. You absolutely need to start with liver and detox pathway support work. It goes over here, which once again, I have wildly disagree with this, of other probiotic strains. Absolutely not. We do not want to add in probiotics, because probiotics are going to increase the gut dysbiosis versus helping with it right off the bat. Really, when we look at this process, like liver detox pathway support work, then we can get into the gut, then we can do mold and systemic parasites, recheck, and then when we go to rebuild at the end, this is where more of the probiotics come into play and can help feed it and fuel our body and help support it and keep it in a good spot long term. Also not a fan of the calcium D-glutarate. Just not the biggest fan. I'm also not sure why it's talking about estrogen clearance when this test has nothing to do with sex hormones. And we should probably try not to mess with sex hormones when it comes to this. And then it does talk about binders, which I do appreciate. So activated charcoal, yeah, can be good. It does mention mycotoxins here, which I appreciate. And don't love activated charcoal, generally speaking, because it's a non-selective binder. GI detox is actually a specific binder, although it's talking more generalized. In GI detox binders versus the binder GI detox, not to be super confusing. And once again, the activated charcoal is okay as a starting point. GI detox should not be taken as a starting point. We will use this sometimes in secondary mold protocols, and some people are wildly symptomatic with it, even after we've done 3 or 4 other binders leading up to it. It is that strong. So it is really important to just be very mindful of binders that you're taking. I do appreciate that it talks about taking these things away from food and supplements. I don't know why it's only in the PM. A lot of times there can be a lot of benefits to taking this in the morning as well. So we see, like, man, does it talk about tons of supplements, and it's also individualized. Once again, like, we're going over and we're symptom managing all of these things. It clearly doesn't know the difference forms of magnesium. It talks about magnesium glycinate, which can be great for mood and stress and sleep. Magnesium citrate is strictly a stool softener, and it definitely doesn't understand that. Once again, I don't love supplementing with B6 by itself. I usually like to do something a little bit more comprehensive, like a prenatal kind of multivitamin. It's going to have a few of these. Once again, we're symptom managing here at the mitochondrial and energy support. CoQ10 I do like a CoQ10. I like to combine it with a PQQ if we're going to do mitochondrial support. And once again, a lot of people are not ready for that right off the bat. And we need to baby step our way into that. Usually we will see detox reactions if we add in CoQ10 kind of right off the bat. And these are other some very specific amino acids that just not a big fan of as a starting point. Like there are bigger things going on, bigger picture. Like it's really highly symptom managing someone with these here. 5-HTP, not a fan of by and large. When it comes to the neurotransmitter pathways, once again, because there are so many things that impact this, especially the gut, especially toxin load, absolutely not. Let's absolutely not do any sort of specific and targeted neurotransmitter support. Now, doing things like nervous system regulation, we may do things that can naturally help with neurotransmitter and mood. The sun, by the way, goes a really long way for neurotransmitter support and mood support and cortisol support and all of these things. And, we're going to probably be wasting a bunch of money if we try and symptom manage all of these things as it is recommending here. Methylated B complex, not a fan. Once again, it can cause a lot of issues. I've seen so many people just react so much. I'd rather do a prenatal multivitamin for additional B vitamin support, methylation support, nutrient support, all that kind of stuff. NAC or glutathione, once again, not a big fan at this point in time supplementing with either because there are some issues going on in it with both of these things going on here. And once again, we might add in something probably in maybe we'll say like phase 2 after we've done some prep work that may include some NAC to help support that. And usually, once again, like a lot of people can react right off the bat if we've got some mold issues going on, which we absolutely do. And then it talks about digestive enzymes. For me, because of the gut overgrowth issues, this is purely a symptom management perspective. This is, if someone's having a lot of acid reflux or a lot of issues, yeah, maybe we're going to talk about some bitters or apple cider vinegar or something like that. But digestive enzymes, largely, we're probably going to waste some money here. And fiber, not a fan when it comes to when we have a lot of gut overgrowth issues, because we're going to feed the good stuff and we're also going to feed the bad stuff here. Does it bind toxins? It can, and it can really slow down motility. And people can end up with a lot of issues going on here and a lot of support issues. So just like not a fan of this overall. So if you can't tell, this was my least favorite one. I think ChatGPT does the worst job of all three that we talked about here when it comes to these functional lab tests or just lab testing overall. And, for me, once again, like this totally misses the bigger picture of this person has mold illness, mold toxicity. We've got all kinds of gut overgrowth issues, and we need to look at all of that. We need to do some prep work before we go into that. We need to do some serious mold work. We need to do a full clear out of the gut, yeast, fungus, bacteria, and parasites. Mold and heavy metals almost always comes with parasites. If you don't address the parasites, almost always you're going to end up with more gut overgrowth issues that they're also going to come back, because through their natural life cycles too, when they die, they release toxins back into the body, specifically mold and heavy metals. So if you don't do work around those, it's almost like those are feeding the parasites. Parasites are also going to feed those levels. And so we have to do work between both of those. You also should not start with parasite work, just by the way. I know some people are doing that now, and that's wild to me. I mean, parasite work is no joke, not to be taken lightly. You can have some pretty significant issues going on when you start parasite work. So and yeah, just be careful, be very mindful of that. And once again, it just totally misses the mold piece here and the heavy metal piece, which are, for me, once again, glaringly obvious issues, and it's so largely symptom managing all of these things. So I hope that helps. I know this test in particular can be quite tricky to interpret, and I've done enough interpretations of this test. I've also taken many courses on this test that I have gotten feedback from clients when I've shared my thoughts and feedback on this test that it is wildly different and more comprehensive than a lot of people that are out there, including functional medicine specialists, naturopathic doctors, tend to be the worst when it comes to this particular test, by and large, not saying all of them. And I typically see those individuals in this space, typically be the worst when it comes to this. So be very mindful of who interprets any of your testing, and in particular, some of these more comprehensive and nuanced kind of functional lab testing. If you are interested or need additional lab testing, if you're not aware of, we have a functional lab store, so we'll put a link in our bio, or in the show notes here, that gives you a link to that. All of our testing is at cost to us, so we do not upcharge for any testing. And then we do have free consults available. We'll do a quick skim over any functional labs, and any testing overall. If you want an in-depth interpretation, we also have options for that as well. And we usually spend 45 minutes, and we spend a lot more time doing something very similar to what we went over today, and break it down section by section, sometimes marker by marker, and then go over, hey, putting it all together, looking at the bigger picture. Here's what a protocol could look like for you. And obviously that can change and evolve over time, and whether someone wants to work with us more in depth or not, I'm able to give more specific recommendations when I see a test like this. So we'll also put a link in the show notes to, if you're interested in scheduling that more comprehensive functional lab test interpretation, we'll also have that available. So I think that is good for this test, and to wrap up this testing in AI. And once again, by and large, I think AI can provide a lot of value and support. I also will caution you, because I'm in a lot of practitioner support groups now. If you are looking to work with a practitioner, interview many, ask a lot of questions. One of the questions I would ask if you are interested in doing some of these functional labs is, what is your training in these labs? Because unfortunately, yeah, individuals are using ChatGPT and other AI services to interpret labs, and so are practitioners, and practitioners who may not be trained in these. I have used this as a way to just look. I've been curious. I know other practitioners are using it, which is why I was curious and wanted to see where it landed. And I've never used AI when it comes to actual lab interpretation. I think it's a disservice. Now, if you're using it to help with, put together something really pretty for a protocol, like, that is a totally different story, as long as the person still is trained and actually knows how to interpret this. Because once again, if we go back to this test, totally missed mold and heavy metals. If we go back to the Dutch test, I totally disagree with the estrogen progesterone recommendations when it came to that. And so those are all things that are really important, because once again, if we're messing with these big things in our body, we can get hurt, and you can end up in a worse spot. And I've been there. I've been hurt by functional medicine practitioners of all kinds, Western medicine trained and not. And it's really unfortunate, and it really stinks. So education is power. The more you know, the more questions that you can ask, the better. And if you have any questions about any of this kind of stuff, we'd love to answer any questions. You can always reach out to us, info@trifectacollective.net, on any social media platforms, and we'd love to chat more. We can also do another episode on this, or do any other testing. I thought about doing a stool testing, and I'm just such not a fan of stool testing that I chose not to. And if there is a lot of support around doing a stool test with ChatGPT, I'm totally open to that as well. So thank you for listening to all of these. As always, please like, subscribe, follow. If it resonates, 5-star reviews really, really mean the world to us. And thank you for following along on this 3-part episodes here. We're doing a deep dive, and I know this can be a little bit more technical. I think there's a lot of value in that, and I also know that sometimes this can go over people's head, and I try to make it as tangible as possible. But if you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.